Judge Crenshaw's gavel slammed, pointing at 9-year-old Malik Thompson. "Get this kid out!" The courtroom laughed, mocking the black boy in his oversized suit. "Pathetic," a woman sneered. Malik's mother, Sarah, pleaded, tears falling. "He's helping! Silence!" Crenshaw roared. But Malik stood firm. "Your Honor, I invoke Rule 17C. Silence fell. What happened next exposed a corrupt system. Get this kid out of my courtroom now." Judge Harold Crenshaw's gavel slammed down like thunder, his finger jabbing toward 9-year-old Malik Thompson as if the boy were a criminal himself. The packed gallery in Montgomery County's housing court erupted in laughter, a cruel wave that echoed off the wooden panels. "Look at this little black boy playing lawyer," a woman in the front row sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. "Absolutely pathetic," another spectator muttered, while the bailiff stomped forward, his boots thumping heavily on the floor. "Move it, kid. You're embarrassing yourself and wasting everyone's time." Malik's mother, Sarah, lunged from her seat, tears streaming down her face as she clutched her son's small hand. "Please, Your Honor. He's just trying to help us." "We're desperate. Silence!" Crenshaw roared, his face reddening with fury. "I will not tolerate this circus in my courtroom. Remove this child immediately before I hold you both in contempt." The crowd jeered louder, camera phones flashing as people captured the spectacle. Someone started a slow clap, mocking the tiny figure in his oversized thrift store suit that hung loosely on his slender frame. Whispers spread like wildfire. Comments about how a poor black kid from the projects had no place in a real court, how this was just another sad story from the wrong side of town. But Malik stood perfectly still amid the chaos, his dark eyes steady and unblinking. Then, in a voice clear and unwavering, he opened his mouth. "Your Honor, I invoke Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 17C for next friend representation." Dead silence fell over the room like a blanket. The judge's face drained of color, turning as white as the papers on his bench. The lawyers froze mid-motion, their briefcases half open. The gallery's laughter died in their throats, replaced by confused murmurs. Because what happened next didn't just shock that courtroom. It unraveled a web of corruption that stretched to the highest powers in the county, exposing how the system preyed on families like Malik's. To understand how a 9-year-old black boy from a crumbling apartment building ended up facing down judges and millionaire landlords, we have to rewind 3 weeks earlier, to the moment when everything began to fall apart. The Riverside Apartments loomed like a forgotten relic in the heart of Montgomery's poorest neighborhood, a place where hope went to die. Peeling paint flaked from the walls like old scabs, and black mold crawled up the corners of every room, poisoning the air with its toxic spores. The heating system had been busted for 6 long months, forcing families to bundle under threadbare blankets during freezing winter nights. Pipes dripped rusty brown water that stained sinks and floors, turning simple chores into battles against decay. In apartment 4B, young Malik Thompson sat cross-legged on the cold linoleum floor, surrounded by stacks of discarded law books that towered over him like ancient guardians. At just 9 years old, with skin the color of rich earth and eyes that sparkled with unnatural intelligence, Malik had already devoured more legal texts than most law students in their first year. His photographic memory locked away every statute, every precedent, every clever loophole, turning his mind into a living library. These books weren't bought. They were salvaged from a dumpster behind the county law library 3 years ago, when the collection was updated and the old volumes tossed aside like trash. While other kids in the neighborhood chased dreams with basketballs or video games, Malik collected knowledge, teaching himself to read at age 3, and moving on to constitutional amendments by 5. His mother, Sarah Thompson, called from the cramped kitchen where she stirred a pot of beans and rice on their stuttering stove. "Malik, baby, come eat before it gets cold." But Malik was lost in a dense case study on tenant rights, his small finger tracing lines of text under the flicker of their single bulb. A battered chess set lay nearby, where he battled himself to sharpen his strategic thinking. The walls around him were plastered with handwritten notes, legal concepts diagrammed in his neat, childlike script, mapping out arguments like battle plans. Sarah, at 28, bore the weight of 3 jobs on her slender shoulders, cleaning offices at dawn, stocking grocery shelves by day, and delivering food until midnight. Exhaustion etched deep lines around her warm brown eyes, but she never let it dim her fierce love for her son. Growing up in foster care herself, bouncing between indifferent homes until she aged out with nothing but grit, Sarah had vowed to give Malik the chances she never had. She spotted his genius early. By age 5, he was correcting adults' grammar and solving algebra puzzles meant for teens. But in a world that often overlooked black families like theirs, Sarah knew genius alone might not be enough to escape the traps set by those in power. Their landlord, Preston Blackwell, was a predator in a tailored suit, owning over 200 properties across the city and turning human suffering into cold profit. He cruised in luxury cars, while families shivered in his slums, living in a mansion with more rooms than most had hope. Blackwell's scheme was brutally simple. Snap up cheap buildings in black and brown neighborhoods, ignore maintenance until they rotted, then blame the tenants for the ruin. When pipes burst from neglect, he sued for flood damage. When walls cracked from shoddy builds, he claimed vandalism. When mold spread like cancer due to broken vents, he accused unsanitary living, all to extract thousands in bogus lawsuits. Families like the Thompsons couldn't fight back. No money for lawyers, no time amid survival jobs, no faith in a system that seemed rigged against them. Most fled, forfeiting deposits and credit, perpetuating the cycle of poverty. And overseeing it all was Judge Crenshaw, a fixture in housing court for 30 years, never ruling against a big landlord. His courtroom was infamous for Crenshaw specials. Guaranteed wins for the wealthy, crushing losses for the poor. Unknown to most, Crenshaw shared golf games and country club memberships with Blackwell, his fees quietly covered by landlord lobbies. It was a cozy conspiracy, greased by money and prejudice, that kept black families like Malik's underfoot. But Blackwell had never met a mind like Malik's, a boy whose brilliance was forged in the fires of injustice, ready to turn the tables in ways no one could foresee. As the eviction threat loomed, Malik's quiet determination would ignite a firestorm, proving that even the smallest voice could echo through halls of power. The Riverside apartments weren't just a home for Malik and Sarah Thompson. They were a daily reminder of a system stacked against them. The building's cracked facade and flickering hallway lights told a story of neglect, where every corner hid a new hazard. Black mold spread like a plague, creeping into Malik's tiny bedroom and making the air heavy with a damp, sour smell. The heater had given up last summer, leaving them to face winter with only thrift store blankets and a space heater that tripped the breaker if left on too long. Leaky pipes turned their bathroom sink into a science experiment, with brown water pooling in the basin. Sarah fought to keep the place livable, scrubbing floors on her knees after 18-hour workdays, but the decay was relentless. She was 28, a single mother who'd clawed her way out of foster care, determined to shield her son from the instability she'd known. Her 3 jobs, cleaning offices at 4 a.m., stocking shelves by noon, delivering food until midnight, barely covered rent and groceries. Her hands were calloused, her eyes shadowed with fatigue. But she poured every ounce of strength into Malik, her brilliant boy who seemed destined for something greater than their crumbling world. Malik was no ordinary 9-year-old. By age 3, he'd taught himself to read using old newspapers Sarah brought home. By 5, he was solving math problems meant for high schoolers, his small fingers scribbling equations on scrap paper. His photographic memory was a gift Sarah noticed early, reciting entire pages of books after one glance, correcting her grocery lists with a grin. When he found a pile of discarded law books in a dumpster behind the county library at age 6, it was like discovering treasure. He hauled them home, one heavy stack at a time, and turned their tiny living room into a legal fortress. While other kids played tag or collected trading cards, Malik studied case law, his eyes gleaming as he decoded complex statutes. A chess set sat on their wobbly coffee table, where he played solo matches to sharpen his mind, moving pieces with the precision of a general planning war. His walls were a mosaic of notes, legal terms, case citations, tenant rights, written in his careful looping handwriting. Sarah watched him with a mix of pride and worry, knowing his brilliance set him apart in a world that wasn't kind to black boys with big dreams. Preston Blackwell, their landlord, was a name that carried weight in Montgomery County. He owned over 200 properties, each one a monument to exploitation. His business model was a masterclass in cruelty. Buy cheap buildings in poor black and brown neighborhoods, let them rot, then sue tenants for the inevitable damage. Burst pipes became tenant vandalism, mold. From broken ventilation was unsanitary living, cracked. Walls from shoddy construction were willful destruction. His lawsuits demanded tens of thousands from families who could barely afford rent, knowing they'd never fight back. Most tenants fled, leaving behind deposits and broken credit, while Blackwell pocketed insurance payouts and re-rented the same decaying units to new victims. He drove a different luxury car each day, his mansion gleaming with marble floors while his tenants shivered in unheated apartments. Sarah had seen him once, pulling up in a sleek black SUV, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the crumbling Riverside complex. He didn't live in their world, he profited from its misery. Sarah did everything right. She reported the mold, the leaks, the broken heater to the city health department, snapping photos and filing complaints with a diligence born of desperation. She believed the system would protect them if she followed the rules. But Blackwell's power reached deeper than she realized. The health department inspections went nowhere, buried under bureaucracy or worse. Whispers among tenants suggested Blackwell had friends in high places. City officials, inspectors, even judges. Sarah heard stories of other families evicted for complaining, their lives upended by lawsuits they couldn't fight. She kept working, her body aching from exhaustion, her mind fraying under the weight of fear. Malik saw it all. The way her hands shook when she paid the rent. The way her voice cracked when she thought he wasn't listening. He'd lie awake at night, hearing her muffled sobs through the thin walls, and his young heart burned with a resolve most adults couldn't muster. This wasn't just about their apartment. It was about a system that crushed people like his mom, and Malik wasn't going to let it win. Judge Harold Crenshaw was the gatekeeper of this rigged game. For 30 years, he'd presided over Montgomery County's housing court, his rulings as predictable as the sunrise. Tenants called his decisions Crenshaw specials, automatic wins for landlords, crushing losses for families. In thousands of cases, he'd never ruled against a major property owner like Blackwell. What no one knew was that Crenshaw and Blackwell were more than professional acquaintances. They shared fairways at the exclusive Pinehurst Country Club, where Crenshaw's membership dues were quietly paid by a landlord advocacy group Blackwell chaired. Over golf games and charity galas, they grumbled about entitled tenants who dared demand heat or clean water. The system was a well-oiled machine with Crenshaw as its enforcer, ensuring families like the Thompsons stayed powerless. But Blackwell and Crenshaw had made a fatal mistake. They underestimated Malik. In their world of money and influence, they couldn't imagine a 9-year-old black boy from the projects becoming their greatest threat. As the storm gathered, Malik was already sharpening his mind, ready to turn their own rules against them. The eviction notice arrived at dawn, delivered by a process server who pounded on their door like it was a police raid. Sarah signed for the papers with trembling hands, her face paling as she read the words, $50,000 in damages for willful destruction of property. The lawsuit listed every flaw in their apartment: cracked walls, water stains, spreading mold, as if Sarah and Malik had caused it all. But Sarah knew the truth. Those cracks were there when they moved in 2 years ago. The mold had been creeping up the walls before they unpacked their first box. The brown water stains predated their lease. She sank into their only kitchen chair, the papers shaking in her grip. "They're saying we destroyed the apartment, Malik," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They have photos, but this damage was already here." Malik, his small frame hunched over the legal documents, studied them with the intensity of a detective. The language was intimidating. Phrases like gross negligence and structural damage, designed to scare families into submission. But Malik saw through it, his mind already piecing together a defense. "Mama, do you still have those photos you took when we moved in?" he asked, his voice steady despite the chaos. Sarah nodded, pulling out a folder of time-stamped pictures she'd taken to document the apartment's condition. "But what good are they, baby?" she said, despair creeping in. "We can't afford a lawyer. Who's going to believe us over them?" Malik's eyes burned with a fire Sarah had never seen before. "We don't need to hire a lawyer, Mama. We just need to become one." That night, while Sarah slept fitfully, Malik dove into the most critical research of his life. He pored over property law, tenant rights, and civil procedure, his small hands flipping through heavy books under the dim glow of their flickering lamp. He memorized federal regulations and state statutes, cross-referencing cases with a speed that would shame seasoned attorneys. His chess set sat nearby, a reminder to think 3 moves ahead. He found a lifeline buried in federal law, next friend representation under Rule 17C, which allowed someone to represent a person unable to act for themselves in emergencies. Sarah was drowning in stress, her health crumbling under the weight of work and fear. Malik could argue she was temporarily incapacitated, making him eligible to act as her next friend. It was a long shot, but it was legal, and Malik was building a case brick by brick. Over the next week, Sarah's world began to collapse. She called every legal aid office in the city, only to hear about 6-month waiting lists or budget cuts. She begged friends for loans, but they were as broke as she was. The stress was killing her. She stopped eating, surviving on coffee and crackers while ensuring Malik had enough food. One night, she came home with a new letter from Blackwell's lawyers, offering a settlement. Move out immediately, admit fault, and they wouldn't pursue the $50,000. "It's our only way out, baby," she said, her voice hollow. Malik looked up from a book on judicial ethics, his face serious beyond his years. Mama, if you sign that, you're admitting guilt. It'll ruin your credit forever. You'll never rent again, get a loan, or open a bank account. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. But if we fight and lose, we'll owe $50,000 we don't have. They'll garnish my wages forever. Malik's jaw tightened. Then we won't lose. He spent hours at the public library, using their computers to dig into Judge Crenshaw's case history. What he found was chilling. In 5 years, Crenshaw had overseen 847 housing cases, ruling for landlords 832 times, a 98.3% win rate that defied statistics. Malik dug deeper, pulling public records and court documents. He discovered Crenshaw's membership at Pinehurst Country Club, where dues cost more than Sarah earned in a year. The kicker: those dues were paid by the Montgomery County Landlords Association, chaired by none other than Preston Blackwell. It wasn't just bias, it was corruption, a system designed to funnel money from poor families to rich landlords, with the court as the muscle. Malik's heart raced as he uncovered the truth, but the stakes were higher than... The morning of the trial dawned heavy with anticipation. Outside the Montgomery County Courthouse, news vans lined the street, reporters buzzing like bees around a story that had gone viral overnight. A 9-year-old black boy taking on a millionaire landlord? It was the kind of underdog tale that drew cameras and crowds. Inside Courtroom 3B, the air crackled with tension. The gallery was packed beyond capacity, spectators spilling into standing room corners, whispering about the kid lawyer. Preston Blackwell sat with his team of 5 attorneys from Morrison, Sterling, and Associates, their tailored suits and leather briefcases screaming wealth. At the defendant's table, Malik Thompson stood alone, his thrift store suit hanging off his small frame, his worn briefcase his only shield. Sarah gripped his hand, her eyes red from sleepless nights, her faith in her son battling her fear of the system. Judge Crenshaw swept in, his robes billowing, his gaze landing on Malik with undisguised contempt. "This is highly irregular," he declared before anyone spoke. "Children do not practice law in my courtroom. This circus ends now." Richard Sterling, Blackwell's lead attorney, rose with a predator's smirk. "Your Honor, we move to dismiss this proceeding. Allowing a child to play lawyer mocks our judicial system. This is a court, not a playground." The gallery murmured, some laughing, one voice shouting, "Send the kid home with his toys." Sarah's grip tightened, but Malik stood, his voice slicing through the noise. "Your Honor, I appear as next friend under Federal Rule of Civil Procedure, 17C. My standing is established through emergency documentation, accepted by the clerk's office after legal review." Crenshaw's eyebrows shot up, clearly unprepared for the boy's precision. Sterling laughed, condescending. "Your Honor, this boy has no training, no bar admission, no grasp of property law." Malik opened his briefcase deliberately. "Mr. Sterling, are you familiar with Williams versus Montgomery County, where the Fourth Circuit ruled that next friend representation requires only competent advocacy, not formal credentials?" Sterling's smile faltered. He didn't know the case, and Malik's citation sounded airtight. The gallery's laughter faded, replaced by intrigued whispers. Malik pressed on. "I move that all evidence today be entered under oath, with perjury penalties fully applicable." The request sent a shiver through Blackwell's team. By forcing sworn statements, Malik was locking them into claims they couldn't easily backtrack. Crenshaw, caught between bias and the boy's competence, grumbled, "Very well, we'll proceed. But I warn you, young man, this court has no patience for games." Malik nodded. "Thank you, Your Honor. Truth doesn't need games, only accuracy." Sterling launched his opening, painting Sarah as a reckless tenant who'd wrecked Blackwell's property. He flashed photos of water damage, cracked walls, mold, his voice booming with outrage. "Mrs. Thompson and her son have destroyed this apartment, causing $50,000 in damages through negligence and vandalism." The gallery stirred, some nodding at the evidence. Malik rose, his small figure commanding silence. "Your Honor, Mr. Sterling's claims raise questions of timeline and causation." He approached the evidence table, pulling out time-stamped photos. "These were taken by my mother when we moved in 2 years ago. Every problem, water damage, cracks, mold, existed before we arrived." The gallery gasped as Malik displayed the images, identical to Sterling's but dated earlier. Blackwell's lawyers exchanged panicked glances, unprepared for this. Malik continued, his voice steady. "These issues were reported to city agencies within our first week. We have records of repair requests, none addressed by Mr. Blackwell." Sterling shot up. "Objection! This child is clearly coached." Crenshaw cut him off. "The witness presents documented evidence." Objection overruled. Malik's confidence grew. "Your Honor, the evidence shows Mr. Blackwell's lawsuit is based on pre-existing conditions he was legally obligated to fix under the implied warranty of habitability." The legal precision stunned the room. Blackwell whispered urgently to his team, his composure cracking. This wasn't the easy win he'd expected. Sterling tried to pivot. Even if some issues pre-existed, tenant negligence worsened them. Malik was ready. Mr. Sterling raises causation, which is why I've prepared additional evidence to clarify the timeline. He paused, locking eyes with Crenshaw. But first, I have concerns about conflicts of interest that may compromise this court. I request a brief recess to gather documentation on judicial ethics. The room froze. Reporters leaned forward. Blackwell's face drained of color. Malik wasn't just challenging the case, he was challenging the court itself. Recess granted, Crenshaw said weakly. 30 minutes. As the gallery buzzed, Malik packed his briefcase, calm and ready. The boy everyone mocked had just shifted the battlefield. The courtroom hallway buzzed with chaos during the recess. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashing as social media exploded with clips of Malik's arguments. Little Lawyer trended nationwide, with thousands sharing videos of the boy's legal prowess. Blackwell and Crenshaw huddled near a side entrance, their whispers frantic. What does that kid know? Blackwell hissed, his arrogance replaced by fear. Shut up, Crenshaw snapped. Not here. Malik and Sarah stood amid the frenzy, tenants from Blackwell's properties approaching with stories of their own. Mrs. Rodriguez clutched photos of broken stairs. Mr. Washington waved ignored heating complaints. That man sued me for $15,000 when mold made my daughter sick, Mrs. Rodriguez told a reporter. The dam was breaking. Families silenced for years were finding their voices, inspired by a 9-year-old's courage. Blackwell approached Malik, his voice low and threatening. Kid, you're playing with forces you don't understand. People who cross me get crushed. Malik didn't flinch. Mr. Blackwell, are you intimidating a witness? That's obstruction of justice. Sarah stepped between them, fierce as a lioness. Step away from my son. Security intervened as cameras captured the standoff, a millionaire landlord cowed by a boy and his mother. In a quiet bathroom moment, Sarah's hands shook. Baby, I'm scared. These are powerful people. Malik steadied her. Mama, I found something big. Crenshaw owns stock in Blackwell's company. The game's been rigged from the start. Sarah's eyes widened. That destroys them, but it's dangerous. Malik nodded. If we don't fight, nothing changes. Other families keep suffering. Sarah saw the man her son was becoming. Brilliant, brave, unstoppable. What do you need? Trust me. When we go back, I'm exposing everything. As the recess ended, Malik straightened his jacket, his briefcase heavy with documents that could topple empires. The courtroom hushed as they returned, the tension suffocating. Crenshaw took his seat, pale and unsteady. Blackwell sat rigid, sweat on his brow. Malik stood, his small frame radiating authority. Your Honor, I request your recusal due to undisclosed financial conflicts. The words detonated. The gallery gasped. Sterling shot up. Objection! Outrageous! Crenshaw silenced him, voice strained. The boy is addressing the court. Sit, Malik pressed on. Public records show you own 500 shares of Blackwell Properties, purchased in 2019. Your Pinehurst Country Club dues, $12,000 annually, are paid by the Landlords Association. Chaired by Mr. Blackwell, the room erupted in whispers. Reporters typed furiously. Malik continued, relentless. Judicial ethics require disclosure of financial interests. Your failure to recuse violates Canon 3 of the Judicial Code. Crenshaw's face turned ashen. These are serious accusations, young man. Not accusations, Malik replied, approaching the bench with a folder. These are facts. Stock records, club memberships, payments, all from public records. The precision was devastating. A new judge, Patricia Williams, was called in, known for fairness and zero tolerance for corruption. This court proceeds under new leadership, she announced. Mr. Thompson, continue. Malik turned to Blackwell on the stand. You claim my mother caused $50,000 in damage. Is that your sworn testimony? Yes, Blackwell said, voice faltering. Malik presented his smoking gun. Inspection reports predating their lease, showing every crack, stain, and mold patch Blackwell blamed on them. You knowingly rented an uninhabitable apartment, then sued us for damages you knew we didn't cause, Blackwell stammered. Those reports aren't relevant. They're signed by your manager, aren't they? Malik pressed. Blackwell was trapped. Admit fraud or commit perjury. Malik unveiled evidence of Blackwell's scheme across 200 properties. Insurance claims for pre-existing damage. Lawsuits against tenants for conditions they didn't cause. This isn't one apartment, Malik said. It's a criminal enterprise using courts to steal from families. Blackwell's lawyers sat stunned. The gallery held its breath. Malik had turned the trial into an indictment of the entire system. The courtroom was a powder keg as Malik delivered his final blow. Your Honor, he said, his voice carrying moral weight. This case represents hundreds of families defrauded by Mr. Blackwell. I move for a full investigation into his practices and referral to the district attorney. Judge Williams surveyed the evidence, inspection reports, tenant complaints, financial records, then fixed her gaze on Blackwell. Motion granted. Clear evidence of fraud and judicial corruption. Mr. Blackwell, you're enjoined from new evictions pending a criminal investigation. The gallery erupted in applause, tears streaming down tenants' faces. Malik had done what agencies failed to do. He'd stopped a machine of exploitation, but he wasn't finished. Your Honor, one final piece. My mama taught me right is right, wrong is wrong, no matter your money or power. He faced Blackwell. You picked the wrong family to steal from. Judge Williams raised her gavel. The room silent. After reviewing Mr. Thompson's evidence, this court finds for the defendants on all counts. Jubilation exploded. Families hugged, wept, cheered. Furthermore, Williams continued, Sarah Thompson is awarded $500,000 in punitive damages for fraud, emotional distress, and habitability violations. Sarah sobbed, collapsing into her chair. The money meant a new home, a fresh start, escape from poverty's grip. All Blackwell eviction cases are suspended for fraud review, Williams added. Blackwell sat frozen, his empire crumbling. He faced criminal prosecution, his wealth and influence meaningless against a 9-year-old's truth. Mr. Blackwell, you will publicly apologize to Mrs. Thompson and her son, Williams ordered. Blackwell stood, humiliated. I apologize for fraudulently suing Sarah and Malik Thompson for damages I knew they didn't cause, he said, voice breaking under the weight of his admission. The moment was electric. A powerful man humbled before a black mother and son from the projects. Sterling, the lawyer who'd mocked Malik, approached with respect. Young man, in 30 years, I've never seen legal work like yours. You outmaneuvered us all. The Bar Association later gave Malik honorary recognition, the youngest ever. In the gallery, tenants found courage. Mrs. Rodriguez filed for mold damages. Mr. Washington organized for repairs. Mrs. Lane contacted the DA about medical bills. Malik's fight sparked a movement. As the courtroom emptied, Sarah hugged Malik fiercely. Baby, you saved us. You saved so many. Malik's eyes shone. We did it together, Mama. You taught me right from wrong. Outside, families held signs thanking Malik. News networks called it the trial of the century. Harvard Law School offered Malik a scholarship, followed by others. What do you want, baby? Sarah asked. To keep fighting for families like ours, he said. There are so many who need someone to stand up. 5 years later, Malik Thompson stands in Harvard Law School's library, the youngest student ever admitted. Sarah runs the Thompson Family Legal Advocacy Center, offering free help to families facing housing discrimination. Blackwell's empire collapsed. Criminal probes found fraud across his properties, landing him 12 years in prison. His buildings became tenant-owned cooperatives, giving families security. Crenshaw retired, facing corruption charges. The Thompson case sparked nationwide housing court reforms, protecting tenants and reuniting families. Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter recovered and studies medicine. Mr. Washington leads a tenants' rights group. Mrs. Lane celebrated her 80th in a safe apartment. Malik's case is now law school curriculum, proof that strategy can topple corruption. People ask Malik what victory feels like. It's not about winning, he tells students. It's proving ordinary people have extraordinary power when they refuse injustice. The boy mocked in oversized clothes grew into his purpose, showing justice isn't about money or connections. It's about truth and courage. His story reminds us we all have power to fight for what's right, to protect the vulnerable, to demand change. What injustice in your community needs a voice? The next Malik Thompson could be you. The question isn't whether you can change the world, it's whether you'll try. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who needs to remember their strength. Like if you believe truth overcomes obstacles. Subscribe to Black Tale Stories for more tales of ordinary people doing extraordinary things.